This is what we try to explain. These are human and universal ideas, because a lot of people, when we try to talk about free market and to talk about freedom generally, etc., they say, look guys, these are idea coming from the West. They don't belong to the West or the East or the North or the South. These are universal ideas.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are in the world and when you're listening. And welcome to this edition of the Atlas Nexus podcast. Today, I am joined by Dr. Nouh El Harmouzi. Nouh is the executive director of the classical liberal think tank Arab Center for Research based in Morocco, but works across the entire Middle East and North African region. They organize colloquiums, seminars, summer schools, workshops. And not only that, but Nouh is a prolific author, writer, and commentator on matters of liberty across the region. Nouh, it's fantastic to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you for joining us. Now, I want to dive straight into talking about some of your experiences with the Atlas Network team. You're an old friend of our organization. I know that you and Dr. Tom Palmer go way back. And in fact, just this morning, I pulled a video clip of you speaking at Tahrir Square back in, I think it was 2011, during the height of the Arab Spring protests in Egypt. That must have been quite an experience for you.
Yeah, definitely. I have nice memories about this experience. We decided in the Arab Center, after what we call the Arab Spring, after what happened in Tunisia and in Egypt, to go there to organize activities, to talk with civil society actors. We decided to organize a big conference there. So the Arab Center invited Tom and many other scholars, and we decided to move forward and to meet in Egypt. And that was funny and very interesting adventure. So we organized our academical activities, many discussions, round tables, etc., with civil society actors. And one of the afternoons, Tom decided, and the whole team and our friends and scholars, they decide that we want to go to the Tahrir Square, which is the biggest square in Egypt, and in which you have a lot of demonstrations, etc., nearly 100,000 demonstrators, etc. So we decided to go there. The situation was very unstable and insecure, but we decided to go there and to see and to live this moment. So we went there, and Tom has his camera and the video camera. And while we were working and talking to people, etc., Tom said, okay, we have a lot of people, and these people, they need to hear new voice or new speech. Can you go and talk to this mass of people? And I said, yes, why not? So we had with us a friend of mine, a big friend of mine working in BBC, and she decided that she will help us to have the mic and to talk to these people, because mainly that was just Egyptian talking to Egyptians, etc. So we told her, can you help us to talk to these 100,000 persons, etc. She said yes, and she used her authority and her media card, and she was able to give us the mic and to talk to these people. I have photos and videos of, definitely you have your photos and your videos of this event, but Tom was extremely clever to be in the right place to take videos and photos of me giving this speech in the Tahrir Square. And I was very anxious and very nervous because Tom Palmer was surrounded by people with beard, etc. And I told to myself, I hope that I will find him again inside this lot of people, etc. But he was brave, he was very courageous, and he found his way. And he turned on his camera, and when I talked to these people, he was able to shoot and to videotape this discussion, and that was. And this is, and we cannot forget this moment.
We have a photo in the Atlas Network offices that captures you in action and Dr. Palmer there at Tahrir Square. And what a phenomenal story. It's so exciting to hear that from you firsthand, because that kind of popular movement and having a voice for classical liberalism that you were able to provide is obviously something that is critically important. And I know that the Arab Center has worked extensively not just in Morocco, but across the whole Middle East, North Africa region to promote freedom and liberty. Would you mind just updating me on a couple of the things that you do at the center and what you're working on?
Okay, so we try to do many things, but I will just focus on the two or three important things that we do that we think that are extremely important to continue to do. So one of our biggest, in my opinion, very important and interesting program is translating. When we start with the advice and with the guidance of our friend Tom Palmer, here in this region, we were not able to find classical liberal literacy in this region. So it's kind we start from scratch, and after that we build a huge program of translating, first of all, a lot of literacy. We translated John Stuart Mill, we translated Friedman, we translated also Tom Palmer, we translated Adam Smith, we translated Hayek, etc. So now the first classical liberal electronic library and the first classical liberal books in Arabic in this region, they were or they are mainly translated by the Arab Center. We all know we cannot change the attitude, the behaviors, without changing the perceptions. So this is long-term hard work, but in my opinion, it's extremely important. So we end up by having the biggest classical liberal library in this region in Arabic, with 50 books and lots of long papers and a lot of articles translated, but also written by scholars. We work with them, etc., and to present the idea from within, the idea of liberty, the idea of toleration, of inclusiveness from within by Arabs. So translating classical liberalism to Arabs and ask Arabs to dig inside our culture and to explain that we have traditions that promoting free market and toleration and diversity in this region. This is one of our biggest program. The second program is, if you write summer school in Arabic here in this region, the first thing you find is summer school of the Arab Center. So before us, the Arabs, did not know what is a summer school. So I was very lucky to be in USA and to be in French and to participate in this summer school. So we bring this culture, this idea of the summer schools here to the Arab world. So if you write it in Arabic, you will find the first research is our summer schools. And we were able to organize summer schools and to bring civil society actors and to bring researcher and to talk and to democratize or to make these ideas very, very popular. And we were able to change the heart and mind of many civil society actors and to create a free market defender in this region. This is the second part of our work. Another part of our work is the Averroes Academy, and we still work on that also till now, is we try to train youth civil society actors, young academicians, how to write policy briefs to advocate for free market reforms. So, and without talking about our incubators reform, about our pépinière, about our roundtables, about organizing conferences, Arab Liberty Festivals, about our cooperation with Fraser Institute, producing the reports annually, etc.
Yes, and we actually had Fred McMahon on our Atlas Nexus show just recently talking about the work that they've been doing around the world with partners such as yourself, which is very exciting. We love Fred. And I have to say, Nouh, it sounds like the Arab Center and you are at the cutting edge of work across the region, between translating these fantastic texts, educating young people, and the summer school being such a unique value proposition. Has the demand from the public been strong for these different programs?
Definitely, I will just give you an example. If now, when we want to organize before the COVID-19, when just to give you an idea, when the Arab Center is announcing that we will organize the summer school, people they are willing to pay and to come from Lebanon, from Iraq, from Palestine, from the Gulf countries, and to pay their air tickets to be able to attend to our summer school. So, and we receive a lot of demands. We receive 600, 700, but we select only 30 or 35%. So people, it's very known program, and people are eager to come and are eager to interact with scholars and to talk about these ideas.
That's fantastic. I mean, the demand speaks for itself on those figures. And I know I don't need to tell you this, Noah, but it really is just so critically important that there is a classical liberal voice within the Middle East, North Africa region. I mean, we're talking about a part of the world with over 500 million people, really an anchor, a center weight for so much culture, history, policy ideas that can be advanced and discussed, and being that voice is critically important. I'm sure you must feel quite a responsibility being in a position to help influence so many minds across the region.
Yeah, definitely. To be frank with you, it's not an easy task. It's big responsibility. For this kind of work, we need to work hard. We need to have a long-term vision, and we need to try and to try again, to fail and to stand up and to continue working. And by doing that, I have, as I told you, many mentors, many examples. They are tireless freedom fighter, and they helped us, they encouraged us. So when I lose hope, I just look around on my Atlas friends and a lot of freedom fighters in the world, and I keep continuing our work. And as we said with my friends of Atlas and Tom Palmer, la bataille continue, or la lutte continue, the battle must continue. And this is why we still keep hope and we're still working till now.
Well said, my friend. Well said. And we're very proud to have you within the network as such a leading light across the region and across the world. So thank you for all that you do.
Thank you so much.
Oh, of course, of course. I would love to dive in with you, Noor, into a point you made earlier, which was having Arabic-speaking peoples from across the region engage with these ideas of freedom, but going further, engage with how these ideas of freedom are actually deeply rooted within Arabic culture. And I know that you have edited a book with our very own Linda Whetstone, the current chair of our Atlas Network's board, entitled Islamic Foundations of a Free Society. So I believe it came out a few years ago, but it's a book that we're very passionate about. I've got a copy on my shelf right here, actually. And I know that it's a really interesting treatise from different authors across the Arab world and North Africa to discuss how Islam and liberty are not just compatible, but deeply intertwined. So would you mind talking me through a bit about the Islamic foundations of a free society?
Yeah, actually, I had the chance to create with the great lady, Linda Whetstone. Yes, the great lady, tireless lady defending, spreading optimism and spreading positivism, etc. So we create the Istanbul Network for Liberty, and we try also with Tom Palmer, we try to bring together many Muslims that they believe on this idea. So we decide with Linda Whetstone with a range of scholars from this region, mainly Islamic scholars, to shed the light on questions about Islam and its compatibility with free society and free economy. So the aim of the book, and when we talk about it, is first to inform our friends and generally the readers of the West or in the West who view Islam with fear and suspicion, and to explain the relation between Islam and freedom. First, this is the first point, and encouraging the second point, Muslims to remember and to learn from their history, and to learn that we have in Arab Muslim country a rich and pluralistic Islamic civilization. And we try to remind in this book that Muslim majority countries, they were once very advanced region, one of the very advanced regions on Earth, and we had an area of tolerance, freedom, science, and medicine But unfortunately, today this region is laggard in most international indexes covering economic freedom, human development, and human rights. So, and we explain in this book that the economic failure of Muslim countries is not caused by compatibility between Islam, the tenet of Islam and the principle of free markets, but the deviation from the liberal tradition of early Islam. So in this book, we try to remind that Islam not only wants economic freedom, freedom of individual from theocracy, but also from the control by the state. And Islam, we try also to explain that in Islam we give a lot of importance to responsibility, the individual responsibility, and to freedom, and freedom of faith from fundamental principles. So this is the idea of this book.
I know that it's accessible on the Institute for Economic Affairs website, and I encourage all of our listeners to go and grab a copy because one of the things that's really struck me in my work at Atlas Nouh is exactly what you're saying, how these ideas of economic freedom, of individual liberty, they're human ideas. They are universal ideas. You know, we had Ibrahim Anoba on the Atlas Nexus show talking about the roots of freedom and liberty across Africa. My colleague Antonella Marti talks on her Hablemos Libertad podcast that we produced at Atlas Network about Latin America and the roots of freedom there. And your work is such an important beacon of freedom and liberty within the Islamic world. And it's just so powerful to see that it isn't just a quote unquote Western idea to say people want economic freedom or that people want tolerance and to live their own lives. You are an embodiment through your work of that's just not true. These are ideas that are historical across many cultures, and certainly not least of all Islamic, Arabic cultures being a real beacon through your work of these ideas if you look through a very rich history.
Absolutely, absolutely. This is what we try to explain. These are human and universal ideas because a lot of people, when we try to talk about free market and to talk about freedom generally, etc., they say, look, guys, these are idea coming from the West, etc. I said, no, they are not. They don't belong to the West or the East or the North or the South. These are universal ideas. And we try to dig deep inside our history and to explain that's a big part of our history, a big part of what we call the golden age of this civilization, Muslim Arab civilization, was allowed because of the tolerant atmosphere of this period, the 19th, the 11th, and the 10th, and the 11th century, because of free markets, because of toleration, because of diversity, and because of freedom associated to responsibility. So this is why we explain that this idea, they belong to everybody.
I couldn't put it better myself, Nouh. That's so powerful. In terms of the growth of the liberty movement across the Middle East and North Africa, I know that back in June 2020, we held our online Africa Liberty Forum. Unfortunately, it had to be online because of the coronavirus pandemic, but it was nonetheless a huge success. And you were a key speaker in one of our landmark sessions, which was a discussion about building your organization. But what made this a really exciting panel from my perspective was it was in Arabic, which was the first time that at an Atlas Network event we'd managed to run an all Arabic session with a great cast of speakers, including yourself. So I'd love to hear your thoughts in terms of leading a session on building your organization in Arabic at an Atlas Network event. Has there been a positive growth in the liberty movement and the civil society organizations working across the Middle East and North Africa region over the last few years?
Yeah, thank you so much, guys, for thinking about that and for doing that. I can only encourage that because it's very important to talk to people and to explain to people this idea by their own language. You know, if I explain this idea in French or in English, I definitely have less impact here in this region than if I explain it in Arabic. So thank you guys for thinking about that. I think that's very important. example to follow. So I was glad that I was invited by Atlas to share this session and to bring together civil society actors from Mauritania to talk about their experience from Lebanon and from Gaza, from Palestine, Gaza, and to talk about the experience of the Arab Center. So many persons, they attend to the conference, but the most important is the persons who saw the video later on because it was diffused online, and after that posted in many in social networks, etc. And we had nice feedback about we are happy to see that you guys doing this work, and that was very important to listen or to understand or to draw lessons from, first of all, your failure, but also your strength, because this is what we highlighted during this meeting to explain what we do good, what we don't do good with less impact that, and we need to get rid of it, and to explain what are the best practices. And every organization shared their best practices in kind of resource bank, and trying to give this idea to the other organizations. So we receive feedbacks from people who listen to that, and people they understand from the experience of the Arab Center or from LIMS, etc. And this is extremely important because people they feel kind of secure, they feel comfortable when the discussion is in Arabic, and because when it's English or in French, we lose a lot of civil society actors who does not speak correctly these languages, or they are kind of shy from participating or talking in this kind of meetings.
I'm so glad to hear of the success of the session, but it's ongoing success too, Noah, because as you say, we want people to be engaged and excited and making sure that this content is available in, a language that people are comfortable with, and the ideas that are being discussed are practical is so important. And I love that you're able to talk about the things that obviously work very well, but even the things that don't, because if any of us pretend that the think tank world is always easy, always successful, I think we'd be lying, because there's lots of challenges and barriers, but it's about working together to identify how we can learn from those setbacks and ultimately succeed in creating a more freer, tolerant, prosperous world that we will all rise as a movement and as people. And that's why we were so excited to see the Arabic language session run at the forum. So thank you for being a part of it.
Definitely, totally agree with you. It's very important because because it's a learning process to talk like Hayek. So we do mistakes and we learn from mistakes. And when we are together, as the proverb says, if we want to go quickly, we can go alone. But if we want to go far, we definitely need to go together. And this is why I was extremely happy to give the final closing remarks, and to thank Atlas Network for giving us this possibility or this opportunity to learn from each other, to help each other, and to send positive message to each other. And as I said, if we want to go quickly, we can go alone. But if we want to go far, if we want to have deep impacts, we definitely need to go together. And this is the great role that you play, guys.
I very much appreciate that. And I know our team does too, Noor. We want to make sure that we are building a movement together for a free, prosperous, open world. And thank you for being on the ground and making that happen. We could not do it without you.
Thank you so much.
As we come towards the end of the podcast and our time together here, Noor, I do want to talk about a specific project that the Arab Centre is working on, and that is the Refugee Reintegration Project. I know it's a massive issue that's covered a lot in the news here about the displacement of peoples due to instability, due to conflict across the MENA region. And it's something that all of us just feel very acutely watching that. But I know that the Arab Centre and you have been very involved through the Refugee Reintegration Project in trying to assist refugees on the ground. So could you tell me a bit more about the Refugee Reintegration Project?
Look, after the Arab Spring, after 10 years of the Arab Spring, we had a lot of chaos, civil wars, etc. So I just give you an example. The Syrian war created some of the worst refugees crises in the world. Almost nearly 6 million Syrians, they fled their country since 2012, and more than 6 million remain internally displaced. So despite the fact that they live to Europe, but generally they leave or they go to the neighbor countries with these countries that have a weak economies and fragile social stability. So for these countries hosting refugees escaping from this conflict, the challenges are and have been very serious. And this is why we explain that we cannot wait forever for aid strategies or for assistance, and they are very short-term solution. So we need to think about a long-term integration of this refugee, given the scale and the duration of the refugee crisis in this region. And we explain, and it's extremely clear for us, that a new approach is needed, an approach that shifts the focus from temporary, semi-temporary, from aid, from assistance, etc., to a permanent or semi-permanent solution, and working on explaining that these people, to be integrated in these countries, we need to look at them as an asset and to change the law, to change the structure of the law, and to make them able to work and to be integrated. So this is why our project, the name of the project is Economic Integration of the Refugees, and we insist a lot that non-state actors can play a huge role in integration refugees. As I said, trade, business, and not permanent aid. This is why we built this project in which we work with civil society actors, with people dealing directly inside the camps with the refugees, and we try to connect them with the policymakers and to work with them on solution crafted by civil society actors, non-state actors, private sector, trade groups, etc., to integrate the refugees rather than waiting for aid, rather than waiting for the state, which are extremely weak and which have many burdens in this region, to be able to integrate, to give chance to these refugees, and to integrate them in sound and permanent way. So this is our job, and we were able to work with many actors inside this region, actors from Syria, actors from Yemen, actors from Iraq, and definitely actors from Turkey about this issue, and proposing non-state solution for the integration of the refugees.
I just am so invigorated hearing about this project, Nouh, because as you've set out so clearly, it's a matter of engaging civil society actors now on the ground to help people discuss different policy solutions, provide a way forward without waiting for help or assistance from a third-party aid organization or government. It's about actually getting in there and helping people's lives. So for our listeners who want to stay up to date on your project, because I know I do, and more than that, stay up to date with you and the Arab Center, how can they stay in touch with you and your work?
So we have our website. They can visit our website. We have our Facebook page. We have our definitely YouTube page. So if they want to contact us, it's extremely easy. They just go to one of these pages. Our page name is www.arabcr.org, or they can go also to Facebook. If they just take this address, they will find everything about us.
Excellent. And I look forward to staying in touch with you, my friend. It's been too long since we caught up face to face. But Executive Director of the Arab Center for Research, Dr. Nouh El Harmouzi, thank you so much for joining the show.
Thank you for your invitation.
My pleasure. And that's all the time we have today here on the Atlas Nexus podcast. My name's Vale Sloan. Thanks for tuning in. Give us a like, subscribe, share it, stay in touch. We love hearing from you, and see you next time.
Atlas Nexus is produced by Zach Talley. Atlas Network increases global prosperity by strengthening a network of independent partner organizations that promote individual freedom and are committed to identifying and removing barriers to human flourishing. The opinions of hosts and guests do not necessarily reflect the views of Atlas Network. Atlas Nexus is an Atlas Network production.